250 major interior and exterior steel columns and thousands of steel trusses. This defies the laws of gravity. Thus, either the height of the buildings is inaccurate, the time of the falls is inaccurate, the scientific calculation that has been used for hundreds of years is inaccurate, or something pulled down these buildings at a faster rate. Check it out for yourself. Point 32. Remember the gray cloud that concentrically blasted out and down the imploding buildings and chased thousands of New Yorkers down the streets while covering the whole area with a sand-like substance? What was that stuff? It was cement and other materials that had been crystallized. Could the blast of jet fuel create this crystallization? No, because at full blast, jet fuel only expands at 208 feet per second. Could a compression demolition do this? No. There is not enough latent energy. The cement would crack and break, but would not pulverize. The only way the molecular composition of these materials could be so scrambled is if there were small-scale nuclear devices or there were high-tech explosives. Since there are no unusual readings of radioactivity that can be confirmed, modern explosives are the logical choice. High-tech explosives, such as RTX or C4, can expand at over 1,000 feet per second and create extremely hot temperatures. Modern explosives could cause the crystallization of the building materials while creating a vacuum that could pull down the buildings at a faster rate than normal speed and leave a residue of extremely high temperatures. Point 33. FEMA put forward this hurried and very short explanation concerning the collapse of the World Trade Center's north and south buildings.
Expansion of floor slabs and framing results in outward deflection of columns and potential overload.
From this expert opinion, the administration and media have aggressively promoted the pancake theory, which claims that the floor trusses expanded, which caused the columns to buckle, the joints to break, and the floors then compressed upon themselves. However, an objective observer would consider these important points. A. Never before has any steel frame building come down because of fire. The World Trade Center fires only burned for relatively short periods of time and at low heat levels. B. For the World Trade Center buildings to react in this way, literally thousands of super heavy-duty joints and welds would have to snap at precisely the same instant. Remember, these particular buildings were engineered for expansion and flexibility. There was also fire retardant sprayed on all of the steel, and the burning patterns were inconsistent throughout the floors. C. A pancake collapse could not come down with such speed. D. A pancake collapse would not have the latent energy to crystallize the building materials, to shred aluminum, or blast rubble to such distances. E. A pancake collapse would not create or maintain the astronomical heat patterns which were recorded and were monitored for weeks afterwards. Point 34. On September the 16th, 5 days after the attack, NASA flew a plane over the site to take measurements and to create a thermal surface map. In this period of time, hundreds of truckloads of debris had already been carried off, and firemen had sprayed millions of gallons of water on the smoking rubble. The results show that there were several hot spots with temperatures over 1,000 Fahrenheit on the surface, with one spot at the South Tower that recorded 1,377 degrees. Most of us noticed that the area continued to smoke for weeks. since neither tons of jet fuel nor a compression demolition have the potential to create this type of heat, much less maintaining this heat for days afterwards, an impartial detective would have to conclude that there was another source for these extreme temperatures. Christopher Bolin of the American Free Press has also discovered that the steel columns at the base of the foundations, 70 feet underground, were melted. That would indicate that temperatures would have had to exceed 2,700 degrees. Hello, is anybody in the predominant media, government, or law enforcement listening? Point 35. World Trade Center Building 6 is an important part of the puzzle. Shortly after World Trade Center Building 2 was hit, there was a huge explosion that appears to emanate from the center section of World Trade Center Building 6. Only later did the building catch on fire. It then burned for hours at a very hot temperature, and the fire was eventually put out. Again, an objective investigator would ask, A, what caused the building to explode before it caught on fire? B, after the center of the building had been blown apart and it had experienced a prolonged and intense fire, why did this building not come down like buildings 1, 2, and 7? Point 36. The facts surrounding World Trade Center Building 7, a 47-story building, are even more bizarre. World Trade Center Building 7 was built on top of a major electrical substation that housed 10 large transformers. Further, the landlord had allowed the tenants to install large diesel fuel tanks with a capacity of over 42,000 gallons to take care of emergency power generation in the building. Some of the major tenants in the building were Mayor Giuliani, who had built a $13 million control bunker in this building, the CIA, the Department of Defense, and the Secret Service. It seems quite strange that the mayor would build such an expensive bunker in a building that was on top of such potentially explosive tanks and transformers. Additionally, World Trade Center Building 7 was not reported to be on fire until 3 p.m. This is 5 hours after World Trade Center 1 and 2 had collapsed. These fires were relatively minor and had been burning for less than 3 hours when the whole thing came tumbling down at 5:25 p.m. It appears from pictures to be a totally conventional demolition. There were no huge explosions. The building walls fell neatly in on themselves, and the rubble was cracked and broken, not pulverized. It is of interest that neither FEMA nor anyone else made a report or even made a suggestion as to what had happened to this huge building that housed some very interesting tenants. Point 37. It is said that
every picture tells a story.
And in the case of the seismic activity as documented by Columbia University Seismology Group, there are some very interesting stories. The South Tower registered a tremor of 2.1 and came down in approximately 10.4 seconds. The North Tower registered a tremor of 2.3 and came down in just slightly over 8 seconds. The pattern that is registered for World Trade Center Buildings 1 and 2 indicates a series of bombs were detonated in cadence, with the last explosion being the largest charge. The pattern as registered by the fall of World Trade Center Building 7 is significantly smaller in magnitude and is the signature of a conventional demolition.